I would say that L2s are probably where I would kind of allocate most investment capital, because I think it will help traditional finance entities kind of come into a decentralized world or a distributed ledger world. I don't necessarily believe the Ethereum narrative. I think Bitcoin is the big kahuna. It's very, very difficult to get away from just the sheer size and the sheer network power of it. And I see recently there are ZK solutions like as L2s on Bitcoin, and there's the BRC20 standard and stuff. So there's a bunch of stuff that's like happening in this space.
Yeah, back then it was all the crazy. So maybe it has, maybe it hasn't, but it let us do it. Usually they're really good at the copyrights and stuff. So who knows? But that's FinTech Week. There's a lot of folks going over there for that. Are you going over?
No, probably not. I'm in kind of deep build mode, so I kind of keeping the travel to a minimum at the moment. So.
Which is fair, but I'm sure we'll see you out there.
Yeah, you'll see me around. You'll see me out and around when it's the right time. When I launch, I'll be wanting a shout from the high heavens that.
Absolutely. We'll get into that, and I guess we'll start the podcast. And we're back, folks, and we're here with Rob Waugh, who's a storied veteran of the traditional finance space and now in the world of crypto. Rob, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Mark. Is that a pleasant way of saying I'm old?
It's a pleasant way of saying that I've got a lot of respect for where you've been. And you've got a very interesting story and journey, which I'm really, I'm delighted to be bringing to the guests that we've got here, because I think a lot of people don't know just how degen you are.
Well, they can judge. But thank you for the invitation. I think I said it before. I think you're a great community leader, Mark, and it has obviously been acknowledged most recently, and always very happy to come and chat to you guys.
And we're very close in terms of chatting because we're in the same office.
Yeah, we're a floor's difference.
Yeah, which is amazing. So if you're ever in Sydney, you want to speak to myself there or Rob, shout out when you guys are in Sydney. But let's get back to the start. Let's go back to your roots and origins. You had this amazing, successful tenure at NAB, but even getting into that space, what is your story? What's your journey been like in traditional finance and then moving into this space in blockchain more recently?
This is, I suppose it's the third act of my career. The first act, I suppose you don't really count education really. So I came out of university. I studied physics at university, which is, it's kind of so I didn't do economics. I didn't do economics or finance or any of those subjects. I knew nothing about the markets, but I did love science, and so I finished university and managed to get a place first at a master's and then at a PhD program. So I worked at one of the particle colliders in Europe. So my PhD is in experimental particle physics, and so that was my first career. So I worked on a particle collider called DAISY, which let's get into the technical details. It collides positrons and protons, and it was, revealing the substructure of protons, which is quarks, if you kind of know that. I was at DAISY, Deutsches Elektronen Synchrotron, if you want it in German.
Okay.
And I did my PhD for 3 years, ran the experiment, which is, colliding particles at the speed of light, smashing them together, measuring it, and then I wrote my thesis up and got my PhD. And
if you miss your thesis deadline, can you say the black hole ate my thesis?
The black hole ate my homework.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
You can do that. And so I completed it in December 99. And really then there was the choice, right? You've got corduroy for your career.
Yep.
And I didn't feel like a corduroy person.
Okay.
So I switched to the pinstripe track and left particle physics, and then went down. I kind of slept on a girlfriend's floor for a few months in London, and got interviews at banks. And amazingly, they don't ask you whether you know anything about financial markets when you have a PhD. And so I got a job in about 6 weeks, and I was on a relative value trading desk.
Amazing.
And and I got to the trading floor, knew nothing about bonds, nothing about currencies. equity markets, it was all a total mystery to me. So that was the end of my
Wow.
first act of my career and the start of the second.
We figured out on the walk over here that you had financial, or let's say P&L responsibility for the building that I was working
Yes.
in when I was in London, good old 88 Wood Street.
I was paying for it.
Small world. Who knew that all that time? Thank you for the venue, the list. They were
You're
great.
welcome. It was nice, actually. It was
Yeah.
a nice area.
They were
Just off
bringing
London Wall.
they were bringing in an app. It's near St Paul's, folks, for those of you that are playing at home. But really good spot if you're ever in London, the city.
Yeah, it's on Wood Street. In fact, actually, it's got one of the smallest churches in London.
Yeah.
In the centre of the road.
Yep.
And so you might think, what's a church doing in the centre of the road? It's in the centre of the road. And I won't go into the conspiracy. This guy's very, very interesting history, as many churches in London does. You should check out that history when you're back in London. Some interesting reasons for that church to be in the middle of the road there.
I've even seen some pubs that were nearby where the pubs would have a little dungeon or a place where prisoners used to be. It wasn't a pub back in the day, but where they would store prisoners and ship them over underground into the courts. Just crazy.
Yeah. It's either that, like a dungeons, or like a priest hole where they used to hide the Catholics when, during the purges.
Yeah,
so London. This is what I must admit I do miss about London is just it's so replete with history. It's like everywhere you walk, you just bump into it, and I suppose that's one of the things I do miss about home. I suppose. Well, that's certainly what was home. Home's now Australia.
As of
today.
So
I'm now Australian.
congratulations.
I think I need to pledge allegiance to the king, but that's pretty much it.
We'll figure something out later. Yeah, I think you got to climb to the top of the Harbour Bridge, which is just over here, and plant a flag or something. So you you did all that, and you got into the traditional finance space. How long have you been at NAB? Because a lot of people know you most recently for your work on the stablecoin and heading up the crypto desk over at NAB. But when did the NAB thing kind of happen?
Yeah, so I think I was in Singapore. So we'd split between Hong Kong and Singapore for about 6 or 7 years. I worked for ABN AMRO first, and then Standard Chartered Bank. And the kids. Asia's great with young children. Yeah, as you know, because you
grew up there.
You grew up there. You don't have to do any kind of cooking or anything like that. And so it was fantastic with toddlers. We had a great time. But we got to the age where our daughter was kind of getting close to school age, and we were like, do we want to take her back to the UK and bring her up culturally English, or another plan? And so we were umming and ahhing about going back to the UK. And then NAB headhunted me, and so I got a job at NAB, I think in July 2013, to be the general manager of funds and insurance, which is one of the FIG businesses. So I looked after the balance sheet of all the funds and insurance companies. And so we decided to carry on the journey eastwards. I think that means we've got to go to New York next. And we carried on the journey eastwards, landed in Sydney, and with 2 young children, and made it our home. So I was at NAB. I did the GM gig for like 5 years, and then got a bit bored of that job. And very luckily, Drew Bradford, who I think you've podcasted before,
we've had Drew on,
offered me a job back on the trading floor, which was actually the home. Like as I said, from my Act 2, I kind of started on the trading floor, and then went to private side M&A and the banking book, really.
Amazing.
Kind of later on in my career. And so he said, come back to the trading floor and we'll do something in crypto or something like that. That was it. And so I came back and worked for him.
That is crazy. And check out that episode, links below on that. But it's really interesting, this theme of people that are from that traditional kind of space seeing, and whether accidentally falling into it or purposefully falling into it, but the benefits, regardless of how they got in, they've stayed, and hopefully you will, as many of us are, stay in this space because we see the benefits for how it can plug some of the holes and the gaps that are in traditional kind of markets. And on that note, like the move that you've done recently getting into CloudTech, how did that come about? And can you tell us a little bit more about what you're planning? What is the plan and the role for
What's
CloudTech?
The plan? Yeah, so I was lucky enough to meet the CloudTech team during building out the stablecoin desk at NAB, and Probably about 9 months ago, funnily enough, an ex-colleague from NAB, who's now the CFO of CloudTech, Mandy
okay.
Jiang.
Yep, shout out
She used
to
to
Mandy.
she used to, shout out to Mandy. She ran the China desk at NAB, and we did a bunch of, deals in and out of China together while I was in the previous role, or my first role at NAB. And she called me up and she said, "You're running the stablecoin desk." I said, yeah. She says, "I didn't know you were into crypto." I said, "Yeah, I'm into crypto," which I think we'll get into the crypto story later on.
Yeah.
And so she said, "Come to Melbourne." And so I flew to Melbourne and went and sat down for lunch with Mandy and Kevin, the founder, and spoke about their aspirations for CloudTech and their vision, part of which was, they want to reinvent financial services, putting like the customer at the kind of center of the service model.
Okay. Yeah.
Doing it in a decentralized way, and it kind of has four elements. An exchange where you can kind of buy and sell whatever you want to do, whether it's cryptocurrencies or tokenized real assets, which maybe we'll get to. A treasury function, which is effectively a stablecoin business. You need to be able to send value to and from.
Oh, they got the right guy for it.
Yeah, they got the right guy. A custody business, which we could talk about that, why that's kind of part of a business. And then you need some kind of origination and asset management business to kind of bring primary assets into that. And if you describe those four quadrants, and when I spoke to Mandy and Kevin, that was their vision. That's Macquarie Group on chain.
Pretty much. That's a good way to put it.
So there you go. That's what we want to build.
Well, we're glad that we're here at the start. Some people are building things like we know what we've been trying to build with like digital escrows, and more recently more AI stuff, and how to get blockchain helping AI. That's an area of interest for us. Others are doing stablecoin related things. Others are doing wallets. Others are doing just various businesses helping the real world. And I think these are the ones that are going to survive. You guys have pretty lofty ambitions there. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, if you're not shooting for the moon in crypto, what else is there to do?
And a place to shoot from. Sydney is a great weather place to shoot from.
This is the launch pad. California, I suppose, has SpaceX, and but we have such a great harbour, and so it's lovely. It's lovely. Obviously, we're split. CloudTech is split between Sydney and Melbourne.
Yep.
Most of the employees are actually in Melbourne, and that's where the head office is. But part of me joining was to kind of build out our office in Sydney as well.
Amazing.
So a bunch of the trading infrastructure that we need to build is likely going to be in Sydney as well, and then some of our operations stuff will be in Melbourne as well. So we'll split between the two jurisdictions, areas.
Watch this space, basically.
Watch this space. We're hiring.
Well, there you go. There's some links for that. We'll throw it down here. I guess we'll get into some of the crypto stories next. So this next part is getting back to the origin story, but more around the crypto journey side of things. So we've seen like what you've done in terms of work, but I think people didn't even know. I mean, I found it fascinating when I heard about the stuff that you've done, even when you were in traditional kind of markets, because you're not new to crypto.
No, I suppose. It's not. I'm not new in the ecosystem. So as I've said before, I did physics, did PhD in physics, not an economist, not economics, no finance, had no preconceptions about the idea of what money is. And it's kind of vague ideas that I knew that gold used to be money, but I suppose it's just kind of like historical education really. And then when the GFC hit, I was in Hong Kong, and ABN AMRO had just been acquired by RBS.
Okay.
And so really, I was kind of like in the firmament of the bailout of RBS, even though I was in the ABN AMRO side in Hong Kong at the time. We kind of heard all the stories, and we got like dragged into the risk meetings about, how much collateral you're going to have to post and do your derivatives trades and all that kind of stuff. So I saw a bank run like at first hand.
Wow.
And so we used to joke about, I was on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise when the Klingons attacked. It felt like it was so crazy and surreal. And I got home one night, we were living in Hong Kong. I got home one night and my wife said, "How bad is it?" And I was like, "Well, the ATMs might not work tomorrow." And I don't know if you remember what it was like then.
Yeah, that was, definitely I just started my career then.
You just started.
And all of a sudden there's no more hiring, there's no more, a lot of things were at risk, basically.
Yeah.
The whole world kind of was shocked, so to speak.
It was. So it was incredibly impactful because it made me start asking these questions about, you're running out of money kind of thing. It's like, well, and you ask the question, well, what do they mean by kind of running out of money? And so at the time I kind of, you're kind of searching around and researching and stuff like that. And I came across the Zero Hedge website in like 2009.
Fantastic.
So actually, if you go back and look at my Zero Hedge account, it's like May 2009 or something when I registered or whatever it was. It was pretty early.
That must have been really early. Yeah,
it was pretty early
for
on.
those guys.
It was and so I was kind of reading that, and then somebody sent me and then my son was born, and then somebody sent me the Satoshi paper while you've got kids, right?
Me, no.
Not
that I know of.
Not yet.
If you are out there, please
give
contact
us a call, +61. Well, when you have kids, in the first 6 to 12 months, you don't really have a social life. You're just kind of sitting at home, even though, I'm not getting up in the night and feeding or anything like that. You're going to be emotionally kind of there. And so I didn't have any social life. Was sitting at the home, and somebody sent me the white paper, the Bitcoin white paper, and I read it, and it was just kind of like, this question in my mind, which was like, where does the initial money for banks come from? And it suddenly everything started to fall in line, and so I just kind of started researching Bitcoin, back late 2010, and then ended up building a Bitcoin mining rig in my spare bedroom in Hong Kong.
Amazing.
And then mined when you could do it on a PC.
Yeah.
For a year or so, and
how'd that go?
Yeah, it was all right.
Yeah.
You learn some lessons. You lose some keys. Everybody does that. Everybody does that, right? So I've lost some keys. Some keys I haven't lost.
Okay.
And I did pretty well.
Lost some keys, but you still know the public key, so you lost the private?
Yeah, I lost the private key. Yeah.
But do you still see the public key?
Oh, yeah, I can see. I looked at it the other day, so I know how much.
I'm so sorry.
I know how much I lost, but it's fine. You live and learn.
One day we'll have to have those crypto commiseration stories, because I'm sure there's plenty of others.
I think everybody's got them. But I think it's part of the learning process. It's just like trading, actually.
Yeah.
Trading, you will lose money.
Guaranteed.
And you realize pretty quickly that although there's a very high degree of quantitative stuff in trading, there's actually emotional management is actually
massive.
As important, if not more important, like dealing with losses.
Yeah.
And whether you had a process for dealing with losses, and so it was incredibly valuable lesson, an expensive lesson, but a valuable lesson.
Well, it got you to where you are today.
Got me to where I am today.
So I think there's more positive than negative, definitely. And on that note, going back to it and wrapping up in a bow, and continue on with this, we talked about traditional finance. We talked about a bit about the crypto and seeing the value in it. What is your vision around, especially with CloudTech and what you guys are trying to do? That bridging, you mentioned it before with the Macquarie Bank kind of thing on chain, but what's your kind of view of the bridging of traditional finance and blockchain? How do you kind of see that playing out?
Yeah, so it's funny when you go from like the trading book of a bank to the banking book of a bank. The trading book, they're mostly centralized exchanges. Everything's reasonably automated. There's a long history of like computer integration. But then when I transitioned from the trading floor onto the banking book when I was doing the coverage role for financial institutions, and you realize just how shockingly manual much of the banking book transactions are. And
that's a trigger word for blockchain.
It's
manual.
That's a trigger word for blockchain.
In a good way.
In a good way.
Yeah.
And so if anybody's ever, settled on, like do an aircraft leasing deal, right? You cannot believe how many faxes and signings.
Facts.
Yeah. It is unbelievable, unbelievable. And so as soon as I saw that, and then as soon as I saw kind of Bitcoin, and then it kind of really dawned on me when Ethereum was launched about the kind of smart contract layer on top, or the virtual machine on top. I was like, okay, now I get the transformational power of having a decentralized network with a unit of account on. Now, I don't think any banks are going to convert to Bitcoin as their unit of account, which is why I think stablecoins are at least an interim
Programmable,
step, and
yeah.
programmable. And so that was the trigger. That was like, and the light bulb went on my head, and like, that's it. That's what you can convert. The cost to income ratio of all of the big four banks in Australia is like 43 to 46%. So they'll make, $16 billion, $20 billion, 43% of it will go on costs. You need to make that 4%, right? And that is how you transition from faxes and centralized databases and people moving pieces of paper around to decentralized ledgers with smart contracts. That's the 10x reduction.
I can see that happening, and we're definitely fighting for it. There's more of a, something that people are noticing a lot more now is that it's so easy to get AI into places, but with blockchain, it's needed more of that network effect. And so, no doubt, just because of the very nature of how it works, it is going to take time. So I've seen some of these comparisons, like AI, like it's everywhere now, or not everywhere, but it's going to be everywhere. But thinking that blockchain is not valuable, they need each other. These are two amazing technologies that in the future will laugh at, just like we do now, like that people wondered and doubted the internet, or like that we're going to do shopping online. It's a no-brainer now, and I guess it's human to push back and have kind of fear, I guess, somewhat about things, but that's what we're here to do, to bridge both of those sides of things. What do you think about like the challenges to getting across the line with some of these places? Like, how do you kind of visualize that in terms of getting people to think about transitioning about how we do traditional finance on the blockchain space? I mean, there's definitely challenges and opportunities there. What are your views on that?
So I suppose, like, kind of looping it back to one of our earlier discussion points about the transition, what it was like coming from traditional finance banking into kind of fintech startup, like crypto Web3 space. The at NAB, oh no, let's not be too specific. At banks, at banks,
yep.
There's this view internally, if they bring in new technology that disrupts, they've got these high fixed cost infrastructure already, and so they're like, oh man, it's gonna disrupt myself, and I've got these high fixed costs, and it's going to be net additive to my cost base to implement these things, and then margins are going to get compressed, and then I'm going to be left with all this kind of legacy technology debt and people and systems which are largely redundant, and it's going to be a nightmare. And they find it very difficult to disrupt themselves because they're sitting on kind of legacy high cost businesses. And I suppose there's an element of, is it really going to transition during my watch, or can I just
get by?
Can I just get by for a while?
That's for the next guy to do.
Let's go for the next guy to deal with. It's the next CEO to deal with, and so there's probably that was kind of felt like a real vibe in banking.
Yeah.
But when you come to a startup or a technology business, they don't have any of those, high fixed cost base. So they're very happy to disrupt. And so the question is, like, how do you marry the two? And so my plan is, build a service that serves customers.
Okay. Yep.
Target high value customers for the banks.
Which they like.
which they hate that because it
Well, if you're
essentially-
targeting them,
because
yeah.
it trims off their high value clients. Give them a better service,
Yeah.
and then essentially force them into the fact that okay, they have to accept the fact that this is being disrupted, whether they like it or not, and therefore
That's very interesting.
they'd rather be on the bus than, left at the bus stop.
That would make for a very interesting married at first sight. The traditional finance group, a bank, for the first time meets the startup that they're going to have to work with.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how that would work, if it would make for fireworks or not. But that is, I like the approach. It's something that they value. If you did something that they don't value as much, obviously they want to protect consumers. I get that and stuff. And there's all the issues around the debanking and whatnot that we've seen in the space, and we've got regulations coming up. So we've got these things that are pushing things forward, some things that have pulled us back, many would say. But making them make moves that mean they need to come across to this side more, I think is great, because as startup kind of folks, you don't want to just wait on things to happen, whether it's a catastrophe like the GFC was a catalyst to doing things. We'd rather make our own kind of fortune. So I think it's really interesting. On those challenges and opportunities, what do you think that, what's the mentality that you think startups need to have, or people that are working in this space, when they think about how, because someone might not even be thinking about how to bridge the gap between themselves and traditional. I know that many are looking at how they help the real world, so to speak, whether it's like what we're doing here in restaurants or otherwise on retail. But do you have any advice for those that are looking to challenge incumbents as to what kind of mentality or what things they need to be thinking about?
Yeah, I think long gone are the days where you can just kind of blitz scale and not really heed any issues around legal or regulatory framework. It's the kind of story is so over now, and actually the regulators, they're really moving to make it a much more like welcoming and open and accepting environment for startups to come in, so long as you follow some really criteria about protection of customers, etc. And so I think you do have to lead like regulatory first, which is certainly at CloudTech. That's what we're leading with. We've got all of our licenses, our fund management licenses, all of the various variations that we have to the license to offer not only our DCE, but also the stablecoin / treasury business that we're going to build, the asset management business that we're going to build, and eventually, I suppose, the custody business that we're going to build. And you just have to. It's just a ticket to the game. There's no if, no buts, no maybes. You can't jump the fence. You've got to do it. And so I would highly recommend that they get that in order. And then, to be honest, most of the technology, it's all commoditized now. And so you're not going to differentiate yourself on the technology. The regulatory and the legal is kind of a ticket to the game. So really it's about your choice and focus on delivering value for customers and your execution. And so that, those are the two things. And it doesn't matter whether that's a crypto tech business or whether, you're selling coffees at that shop down there, right? That's what you got to do. You got an exceptional product that's valuable to customers.
It's the same thing, right? And it is a numbers game. And what do they say about like first-time founders? They focus on the tech. Second time and post that kind of founders, if people are lucky enough to,
got to focus on the customer.
Absolutely, the execution, the customer and stuff. And then I think after that, like, you just got to maybe question yourself if you're a 10th time founder and it hasn't been working out. But maybe it is 10 times lucky. I mean, Colonel Sanders, whoever he was, that the KFC guy, he was so much older.
10 times, was it?
I don't know if it was 10, but I don't think it might not have been his first startup, but the point was that he was older when he started. So this is definitely a low barrier of entry to get into. I mean, the codes, much of the code is like open source.
No, they're all Open Zeppelin. Like standard ERC20 libraries.
You don't start from scratch, so there are standards at least in terms of how to do things there, and the building blocks are there. But I think the beauty is now that it's going to be the rewards will go to those that execute well, and this is the time to look at that. So I'm glad that you guys are, there's more maturity in the market with the Bitcoin ETF, with folks coming into this space with Bankless podcast had Franklin Templeton, one of the SVPs from there, and a very just mature way, an insight into how traditional finance is looking at these kinds of assets and the benefits of them. So, and not just for the investment side of things and money go up. so I just want to go back to talking about the future of blockchain in banking. Just what are some of your thoughts on where do you kind of see this heading? Any kind of spicy takes?
Yeah, so I suppose if I was investing money in this sector, which we do because we've got a VC fund within CloudTech, I'm kind of most interested in L2s. Okay. And the reason I like L2s is they represent, like particularly ZKs, is they represent a great way of kind of bridging between kind of decentralized finance or distributed ledgers and centralized legacy banking and exchange systems. And because most of those are, they've got their own enclaves and they're provisioned and they have batch processes and they don't really like meld well with L1s that are just like pendulums.
It sounds like L2, right?
Yeah, which is L2 is the solution because you can kind of roll them up and you have optimistics and stuff. So I would say that L2s are probably where I would kind of allocate most investment capital because I think it will help traditional finance entities kind of come into a decentralized world or a distributed ledger world. And so, but the key question is, well, which L1 are you building your L2 on? And I don't necessarily believe the Ethereum narrative. I think Bitcoin is the big kahuna. It's very, very difficult to get away from just the sheer size and the sheer network power of it. And I see recently there are ZK solutions like as L2s on Bitcoin. And there's the BRC20 standard and stuff. So there's a bunch of stuff that's like happening in this space that I think is going to be super exciting to kind of meld, Bitcoin and then kind of tokenize stuff.
That's a spicy take for sure. Did not expect that. And we just had our meetup a few weeks ago, our online national one, and we had folks, Gordon and Thomas, speaking about DeFi on Bitcoin and ordinals and all that kind of good stuff. So it's going to be really interesting to see where that heads. And I think you're right with the ZK stuff. That batch processing and roll-ups, whether optimistic or otherwise, is the way to go there. But the commercial confidentiality that we get from using ZK. So I go to the coffee shop and I can click to see the transaction and see the wallet address of the person that just I paid for the coffee, and I can see all of their transactions. That doesn't work in the commercial world. We need confidentiality, and ZKs can offer part of that, and we saw that with some of the project with the RBA.
Yeah, my grandmother doesn't want all of the transactions revealed to the world, even though there's nothing like interesting there. She's just she just doesn't want.
We're gonna have to get Granny on if she's got a cool
Granny
story.
Can definitely. She has the 3 stripes as well.
Oh, fantastic!
And so I think but the interesting thing, you have to look at history as well. And the reason I say Bitcoin is because if you go back and look at the history of merchant banking and capitalization of merchant banking, like from the Medicis, there's a very clear historic parallel between how banks were created. And so that's how I look back. And I'm not going to say too much because we've probably got some publications coming out.
Watch this space.
Yeah, watch this space. And so I don't want to kind of ruin that. But there is historic parallels that you can draw to now, which is super interesting around what L2s you put on top of Bitcoin.
I love it. I love the spice. And you mentioned the Medicis. Whether it's folks like Bankless or Robert Breedlove, other podcasters out there that have spoken about this like digital renaissance that we're going, or the modern renaissance, and what the old original one was. There's a lot of parallels there. So I'm not sure if the papers that you guys have put out will be on that, but would love to read them, and we'll make sure that we share them with the community. And speaking of community, what do you feel about community? How does that kind of resonate with you? Like, what are your thoughts on how is community important to you?
Yeah, so I coming back to my my origin story of being an academic, everything was open source, right?
Wow.
You contribute you write code in a collaboration, an experimental collaboration. The code is public. You release it. I did a couple of stints at CERN where Tim Berners-Lee was like writing, the World Wide Web protocol.
Amazing,
Everything we release in academia is for public consumption.
Yeah.
And then I went into banking and it was like, no, everything's secret. And so it felt a little bit, disjointed of the way they did. But I did finally get NAB to release the stablecoin code as GPL v3 when I was there just before I left.
Yep.
And so I'm going to continue that. It's in my DNA, right? That kind of like open source collaborative is in my DNA. And I'm going to continue to that at CloudTech. We love sponsoring you guys, for the community events. And really our customers are our community as well. And if we don't have our customers, we have nothing. So really interested in keeping on with the community engagement and collaboration.
Amazing, and watch this space for sure on that. And if people want to get in touch with you, Rob, like they're interested in anything that you said here, they want to learn more about CloudTech, UB, etc. What's the best way for them to do that?
So reach out to us through our X or Twitter if you're my generation. And we're also on LinkedIn, or you can connect us through our website. And it's either CloudTech or Cobb WebPay, which is our exchange, our DCE exchange, which you can get great OTC prices. I'm allowed to market that a little bit.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Prices for Bitcoin and Ethereum and other stable coins. And reach out through us through there. And very happy to collaborate with people who have tuned in today to listen to your podcast.
Amazing, folks. Well, the other cool thing is that you'll see much more of these guys out in the community and events, and much more of Rob out there too. Suited up sometimes, maybe, but
suited and booted, half and half. I'm not a crypto bro. I'm a crypto gentleman.
I like it. The crypto gentleman here. We'll have to bring you back on for the next show. So thank you so much, Rob.
Thanks, Mark. Oh,
and then there's the
intro. Are we starting?
Yeah, well,
are we breaking
this is all preamble.
Are we breaking the third wall now?
Okay,
cool. And so that was my first career. So I worked on a particle collider called DAISY, which, let's get into the technical details. It collides positrons and protons, and it was, revealing the substructure of protons, which is quarks, if you kind of know that.
Kind of like the stuff that's maybe going on out there.
I hope you can see that. They are evacuating the Disney boat.
It's only a test. There's been
it's only a test.
Injuries to Disney characters or anything like that.
Oh, no, there is smoke. No, we need to tell the audience one thing.
What's that?
That I got the 3-stripe memo.
Oh, yeah, actually. Before we continue, folks, let's take a look at the shoes here. If you just want to lift it up a little bit.
I got the 3-stripe memo because I'm in crypto now.
We need that.
Merch. Okay, definitely merch.
Merch is something. Who do we talk to for that?
Liam's your man for merch.
Well,
although it looks like you're losing room there.
It's okay. We'll find a way. I'll just get a new laptop. That's the way it works.
Are you the only person in crypto with a Windows machine?
I do not want to confirm or deny it's a Windows machine. Do another recording. Can you just talk again?
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Check.